right, so we're back. Will, I have a question for you. When you were a kid, this is before, let's say, you were old enough to really watch scary movies. Did you ever happen to sit around a fire and either you or others, you shine the flashlight under your face and you tell ghost stories, and you're trying to scare, I don't know, turn me over, turn me over. I think
like
my mom told one around our campfire. Yeah.
Yes.
Ghost stories. You familiar with the ghost story?
Yeah, of course. Spooky.
Do you know any ghost stories?
Ghost. Not really. I mean, more of the story of the what's it called? The call's coming from inside the house. That's the first like scary story that I remember hearing that my cousin told me when I was really young, and I went, "Oh, it's God!"
Yeah. And I mean, what was the allure? Like, so it's dark out, we're sitting around the campfire, we're telling these stories, everybody's heart's racing, you scream, but then you laugh. And that little emotional arc there, it's cathartic. It's a release where we get all tight, tensed up. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then boom, the fear bomb drops, everybody screams. And then the next thing you know, everybody's laughing. And this is the familiar arc of the release, emotional release arc that people experience when they go to a horror movie. And so we're gonna talk about our love-hate relationship with fear. Specifically, we hate being afraid, except when we don't, except when we want to be afraid.
Right.
And are you aware, Will, that since COVID, the most reliable box office draw has been the horror movie, not the superhero movie. In fact, superhero movies kind of died during COVID, like Marvel's kind of like, VCU. But the horror movie has been the most reliable box office draw. And some of these are blockbusters for a lot of folks that don't really get into horror movies. Maybe they don't really understand that. But what we're going to do is we're going to unpack why we love to be afraid, specifically why people want to go to the movies to be scared. So before we start, though, think of your favorite horror movie, or if you don't have a favorite, like, because maybe you don't like horror movies, like what's one that really stands out, like is memorable for you, where you really got scared, but maybe it's okay now? I don't know.
Yeah, I think the scariest thing I ever saw was The Ring.
The Ring.
Yeah. That I still actually at 31 years old still sometimes sleep with my head facing the door just in case there's a girl there with her hair down over her face in the corner of the room, or climbing out of my TV, to come get me, because it's just horrific, because it's an innocent girl and she turns into a demon monster freak, and the hair in front of the face just hiding the identity is like, forget it. But
now, it sounds like you don't like the movie The Ring. Like you're not like, hey, I want to watch that one again. That was a really good one.
I don't think I'll ever watch it.
Sounds like you're still kind of like, okay.
Oh, I'll never watch it. No, I'll never put it on again. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even want to face it.
For me, it was, well, it's scary stuff. For me, it was Friday the 13th, the original. And I don't know how this happened, but I'm like 10 or 11 years old, and we just had basic cable. So I don't know how it showed up on my TV, but my dad was turning through the channels, and he just parks on this movie. I don't have any idea what it is. And it's the original Friday that's playing on basic cable. And, back in the day, like in basic cable, everything was edited for TV. So you're not supposed to see nudity, you're not supposed to see bloody violence, and you're not supposed to hear language, right? Certain words, they were cut. And so, but for whatever reason, the opening sequence,
you got them all.
And I'm like, I'm traumatized. And right at that moment, my mom walks down the stairs. What are you watching? And my dad's fumbling with the remote, trying to turn it, and it scarred me for life. And I'm like, I can never see that movie, Friday the 13th, again. And Anyway, so we're not going to talk through all horror movies. And look, we're talking about movies that for a lot of Christians, a lot of believers, a lot of people of faith, they just don't want to go there with any of it. And I totally respect that and get that. what we're doing today is not saying horror movies are good or bad. What we're doing is we're saying, what is the story behind our cultural infatuation with horror movies? What is it about the horror movies that appeals to us to just simply say, oh, the culture's so crude and crass, and so anything that bleeds or anything that, well, that's not exactly true. And not all horror movies are gory. Some of them are psychological horror. Like you might take the movie What Lies Beneath with Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer, right? And so
Don't
he's had
mention that movie.
Oh, you don't like that one either? Is that another one you don't like?
Oh, please. You mentioned that on purpose because you heard me say that before. You heard me say...
What's your deal with?
No, that was the movie I was traumatized with. I shared that in confidence. No, I'm just kidding. No, I was traumatized. I was traumatized with my sister when we were younger. My grandma had that on in the house when my parents had us stay over there, and it wasn't even like, I look at it now and I'm like, all right, so the dude was like having an affair or something like that. It's more of like a problem between two adults. And there's a lot of sexual tension. And I'm like, first of all, what the heck was this doing on in my grandma's house when I was like 8 years old? And I'm just standing there, no problem. And then, and then I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is not what it was to me when I saw it. But obviously for a young person, it's traumatizing. So yeah, that movie I still haven't watched. Yeah, that one I'm going back to see because that one I know, and I haven't seen it since. But I know I can handle that one. That's more of like just a B horror movie that is more of a thriller. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's to my point, right? So some of these movies are not, they're scary, they're intense, but they're not gory, and there may or may not be any kind of like, let's say, occult or something about that.
Right.
So for me, my part, I don't care at all for movies that have graphic violence, gore, and that. So that for me, I look at it and it's intended to look real, and I'm like, it looks real, and I don't want to see that. But I will go in for the occasional thriller, or when we did our last episode on Halloween, we talked about the movie It, and how in that movie it depicts graphic violence against children, and I'm kind of like, nope. Right. Yeah. So for me, those are the lines, but. We've all got our own sort of sensibilities, and we've all got our where we say, yeah, I don't want to watch that, or that's not entertainment to me. But for a vast swath of our population, the horror movie genre, whether there's violence or it's just more like psychological horror, like remember Blair Witch Project, like
of course
there's no violence whatsoever in it. It's all implied, it's all suggested, but it's freaky, it's scary, right? And so why would somebody, let's say, subject themselves to that? What's the story behind horror? And what I want to say is, and our viewers can weigh in the comments. What I want to say is this is one of the ways that we process our everyday fears. That we go to the movies and we get scared, and then we walk out of the movie theater and go, but it was all make-believe and none of it was real, right? We do that to process and maybe frame our real everyday fears and anxieties. In other words, it's our attempt to master fear, to outwit fear. And specifically like our fear of the unknown, our fear of like violence and, having violence be perpetrated, our fear of things like our children being taken from us, right? So by depicting it on the big screen, I think there's this idea, and it's not conscious, but it's how we process our fears, death and loss and all of these things. What movies have you seen, Will, horror movies or, thrillers that you found scary but entertaining at the same time? Any come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the Final Destination series. It's entertaining because the deaths are so stupid and horrifically, like, just awful, but...
Over the top.
Yeah, over the top. That's what it is. That it just ends up being funny, and, the last movie was, like... And they're all very aware of themselves, those movies. So it's to me, it's more of like this is a horror gore thing, but like we're very aware of the fact that it's ridiculous, and like that's being said throughout the time. I think that you're watching it, which kind of makes it fun to watch, because it's like, oh my gosh, how is this dude gonna die? Because at that point you've taken like the seriousness of death and you've totally thrown it out the window, which I don't think is
absolutely.
Which is it could be dangerous at times, obviously. But you've taken the realities of the situation and thrown them out. And if you can successfully, like you were saying before, it alludes to the same thing. If you can do that, that's what the beauty of it is, because you go experience it and then you leave. And then it's like, well, none of that happened. And so, or even use it to your advantage. Oh, why was I scared about going to work tomorrow? Like that lady got her throat slit. That's way worse.
I don't know that it actually works that way though. So, and this is a question when you say if we can laugh at death, right? Because these deaths they're so over the top and they're so slapstick that I'm actually laughing. Or I'm trying to say, how's this going to die? Or like I remember the trailer for one of the Final Destination movies where the lawnmower gets turned up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you see the shard of glass in the grass, and you just know he's going to step on the glass. Right. He's going to fall back into the lawnmower. He's going to scream. Everybody's going to get sprayed. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's how we laugh at death. It's how we kind of like emasculate death and turn death into something that we don't fear because it's predictable and it's laughable.
Right. Which is, kind of just passing the time by of one of those just things that we don't have to sit and consider death. Because in those movies, I'm not told to reflect on death, really. I'm not doing that at all. If anything, I've basically taken that and just like totally gone the other way with it.
Exactly.
But then, for me to start turning the page here into the next section of this, where I think you're going to go is more where it's the other way around, where these movies actually put a spotlight on these things and particular evils or happenings, deaths, whatever, spirits, whatever you want to call it. However they do that, put a spotlight on something that ends up becoming the forefront of your mind and actually causing trouble in your head, rather than something that can go to the back and say, oh, I can disarm myself because this is in the back of my head. Something that's now like, oh, I'm watching this and this is all coming forward and now I have to deal with it and I don't know how.
So what I would say, and I think this is going to be a little bit of a complex point here, but what I would say is it's not so much that the horror movies are the problem. Rather, we use horror movies to try to solve a problem that they can't solve, right? So I can't overcome my fear by watching other people, these people, in fact, it may actually undermine my own anxiety, my own struggles with anxiety, to see these things depicted on the big screen. It's entertaining. Maybe it's entertaining. Maybe it's, lighthearted. Maybe it feels like an escape for a little while, but then I'm probably going to end up right back where I was, struggling with my regular fears and anxieties. And I want to suggest that before we talk about, let's say, because there is a dark side to all of that, and I don't mean like spiritual, like demons and things like that necessarily. What I mean is, like, what is the toll that such things take on our souls? Mm-hmm. But before we get there, there's another, I think, reason why horror movies have exploded in popularity. And so you're familiar with the term doom scrolling.
Yes.
And you know what that is?
Of course.
Where you're just flipping. And so we're getting these little dopamine hits as we flip. And we're training our brains to need more and more of the hit to get the emotional reaction. So it's kind of like if I were addicted to sugar or drugs or whatever, the more I take of the substance, the more my resistance builds up. Mm-hmm. And the more I need something, let's say high octane, to really get a hit off of it. And this is true with doom scrolling. So we're getting these dopamine hits, and now I can't be shocked. I can't be, nothing gets a rise out of me. Right. And so now if I really want to have a strong emotional reaction to something, I'm going to go to a horror movie, because that's like the roller coaster, right? I'm going I'm going to see the thrills and the spills and all of that. And
Right.
that will help me connect to my emotions. And so if you look at horror movies as like the freebasing version of like doom scrolling, I think that's why they've exploded in popularity. Is people are looking for an emotional connection,
Right.
something to, get it. And I think that's the purpose that they're serving for. It's more so than, let's say, the superhero movie, the rom-com. I mean, when's the last time you heard of a rom-com coming out in the theaters? It's like, does anybody watch those anymore?
It's direct to Netflix or whatever it is. And also, I think, I can comment the same. I think it's the same reason that, I know a lot of women like to watch, sappy love movies sometimes, because I think it does help them connect with their emotions. Like, my wife says, like, I want to watch this movie. And I'm like, well, that movie's going to make us both cry. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want to, but, and, I don't want to cry at a movie that I know. I like when I'm watching a movie and I didn't expect to cry. That's the beauty of a movie and a story. But like when you're going to, or like, oh, let's watch that one. It's like, well, no, I'm going to tear up. Well, yeah, that's great. I actually think it's because it's a desire to connect with emotions. So people getting that dopamine hit out of that jump scare, right? They're like, oh, I just felt something there. Oh my gosh, I got really scared, and they connect it with that side. But then, like you're saying, the problem is the movies have to keep coming out with newer stuff. That's why those horror movies that utilize the classic jump scare techniques, they're trying to reinvent the wheel, because even horror movie fans are just getting bored with it. They're like, oh yeah, the jump scares aren't even scary. They're not even what I went in a theater where they're doing 4DX now, where I don't know if you've been in one of those. But it's a theater with moving chairs and wind and rain and water, and the chairs have motion. And they're trying. It's
like Universal Studios.
Yeah, and I saw Fast and Furious because I was doing a promo shoot or something with one of my buddies, and we got a free screening of the movie, and I didn't mind it. The only problem was, number one, I didn't pay attention to one thing that was happening in the movie, the story didn't have to be good. And then the second thing was that my popcorn and my drink were all over my lap, because it was literally all over the place. I was getting sick when I was trying to watch it. Anyway, so I think they're kind of like running out of steam. So anyway, with those horror movies, we already had the whole craze with the found footage, horror movies being made for $10. Like, that was really big for a little while because it was even more real. It was like, this is a home video camera, But now I think the only thing that I'm seeing and noticing more is that when I see demonic movies, or when I see horror movies that have gone that route, they have gotten worse and sicker and more twisted, which is unfortunately the exponential, like, so while the other movies have like more jump scares or more blood, okay, well then the other side of it has more demonic undertone, to the point of where it's overtoned, to the point of where it's so intense I cannot watch. It is so sick. And other people are just like even numb to that. There are some horror films that I've seen that have such sick, twisted endings that I have not been able to like rid out of my mind, because it was that sick. Or that demonic or evil. And anyway, I'll let you take us there, but I know that that's coming next.
So where you're going with that then is and this is to the point, right? That the more we kind of the more we kind of tap in to this fear roller coaster, the less we react, right? We eventually become numb to it. And so if we're becoming numb to it, and the movie maker says, well, we want a lot of people to come to our movies, then I guess we got to crank up the elements in order to get them to have that experience in our movie. And so people are like, hey, I need you to put that in your movie, because I'm not paying for tickets, paying $20 for tickets and $18 for popcorn and a drink, to not get scared, and so, yes, absolutely. That's what's happening. So there's this supply and demand. So what I want to suggest is that Christians, well, humans should be wise and self-aware about, we want to focus on what we put in our bodies, but what are we putting in our souls? I don't mean to suggest that there's no redeeming value from a movie, let's say like The Shining, right? It's disturbing, it's fear inducing, right? And there's a kid in the movie, right? But the whole point of the movie is not just to scare the audience. And of course, there's some nudity in it too, so you want to make sure you skip through if that's something that you don't want to watch. Or I recently saw the movie Weapons. I wasn't sure I wanted to watch it because there was a bunch of kids in it.
Starring kids, yeah. I didn't see that.
So, but when I read something about it, it says that all the kids. Well, I shouldn't give any spoilers. I'm not going to give any spoilers. But what I want to say is there are some disturbing images, but none of those are perpetrated against children. So I was like, all right, I'm going to give it a try. And if I get to a point where I'm like, nope, you crossed my line, I'm going to shut it off. And I have to say, I would definitely not recommend anybody watch it with a child or a minor at all. But I have to say, as far as movie making goes, and as far as like good versus evil and does good win and the value of, let's say, community and coming together and overcoming fear and prejudice and working together for the good of the community and to rescue kids. I mean, it was an entertaining movie. And I thought, yay, team humanity, there are definitely some disturbing there's some disturbing images. So, you shouldn't watch it if you're squeamish about that sort of thing. But I would say it was not the kind of imagery where it's like gore for gore's sake. It was, I hate to say tastefully done, but, so I just came away from it going, I like that movie. And so I'm saying this to the internet. I'm saying this to YouTube. I liked that movie. For me, it has some redeeming qualities. There was also, and if you watch some analysis of the movie online, there's some really in-depth analysis. It's a really fine made movie. It's well made, just in terms of the filmmaking, quality and all of that. So, Will, you might check out something online that talks about how that movie was made and how they frame the shots and how they tell the story. It's pretty cool. So that being said, I definitely want to say I am aware that it takes a toll on me, right? So I watched that movie, Weapons, and while there were redeeming qualities, I'm aware that afterward I feel like, oh, there's some real heaviness in my soul, and so I say to myself, well, is that wrong? Is that sinful? And I said, well, I'm not feeling convicted by it. I'm aware that I know some people that would think, oh, you're a bad person for watching that movie because it's rated R or because there's violence or something like that. And I'm like, well, okay. But I think more to the point, what I want to say is as I tap into those heavy places in my own soul, whether it's my fears, my grief, because the movie taps into grief as well. There's also heroism. There's also one hero kid who really just, comes to the forefront as a hero. The heroism that's depicted in the movie. There's a parent-child relationship that just really comes alive in it. And I think about, how would I handle that? As all of those emotions come to the surface, I'm aware that, wow, as the movie stirred my soul, stuff comes up and I can think about it and ponder it and even pray over, God, thank you that my kids are all okay, and to be then grateful. So I want to say that there are these opportunities that we have. If it's not so disturbing and it's not something that, and if I can keep it in my head the whole time, this is intended for entertainment, not to expose me to the devil or anything like that, then I think there is some redeeming value. And I think that Christians should exercise wisdom. And I think we should know our limits. Each of us, we should say, okay, that's my limit. For you, like The Ring, girls with hair down over their face. That's my limit. I'm drawing the line there. For me, it's violence perpetrated against kids. That's my limit. I mean, I watched a movie that was not even a horror movie and a kid gets attacked and I'm like, nope, done. I'm finished. So know your limits and then, exercise wisdom, recognize the impact. And I want to say, okay, What do you think, Will? Like, is in terms of like, because I know we were both raised in pretty traditional Christian homes where maybe certain things were frowned upon, and now we're, exploring, our own, like ethical boundaries. Where for you talked about you like the Final Destination movies. Where for you do you feel like, I don't think I want to go there. I don't think I want to entertain that stuff. You mentioned demonic stuff or occult stuff, maybe it's.
Yeah, I think stuff that our eyes are, just not meant to see as Christians. I would even say like it's, it's. I don't know. I feel like when you're watching.
What would you put in that category?
Like movies.
What would you put in the category of? What are things that our eyes are not meant to see in your?
I would say glorification of possession, glorification of sin, and glorification of evil. And also, I think evil, having a triumph over God. I think is where we call it, because that we know that's not true. So we're subjecting our minds to something because to me in those demonic movies, The Conjuring, The Exorcist, which again, they're classic, or The Exorcist is a classic movie and, just well done. And for the time it was groundbreaking, but, and the acting and all those, there's redeeming qualities to it. But, or at least to the art, right? And people are allowed to express art, and art could make us feel one way or the other. But I just feel like, the eyes are a window, and it's like, as Christians, why would we subject ourselves? It's almost like, in a sense, it's similar to watching pornography, because you're just watching something you were not meant to see. You're not supposed to be looking at that. You're not supposed to be in on that. You're not supposed to be even getting entertainment or enjoyment from that. And I think like once you see evil with no way out, and once you see evil that has triumphed over God, I'm like, all right, well, and enjoying that, I think it's borderline blasphemous, in a way, if you think about it. But not to say that every single movie has done that, because there have been movies that have taken, like for me, there was this show called The Haunting of Hill House that I thought was so well done that I couldn't not watch it. Now, there were evil pieces to it. There were creepy things that happened. But to me, there was no idea that God was defeated. Or there was no idea that, like, to me, it was, now we know as Christians we have the victory, right? And no power can be over us, right? We're in Christ. So Christ can, he makes the demons flee. I mean, at his name. So knowing that, right? But in this show, to me, it was like there was some creepy stuff. There was a woman that was mentally like sick. There was some graphic, dead people, spirits and stuff like that, and whatever, and just really like, wow, that's really getting me. There was even but it was made so well that I couldn't not watch, and I hate horror films. Not hate meaning I hate them, like don't put, like I hate all horror movies as in like that's my opinion. It's more about I hate it, like please, I don't want to, my wife will tell you I hold my foot up in front of my face like this so that I can't see. So I'm like watching my foot and I'm watching the movie in my peripheral vision. And I watched The Haunting of Hill House like that. I watched it with my feet in the air. Because it was so, it was just.
What is a good filter? Is it for the scary?
Yeah, it is, because it's a peripheral vision. I guess I'm not really concentrating on it fully, but there's just some.
We're only watching like this. It's not getting it.
There's some play on, like for me, like the. It's like the way they did it. So this is like this to me. This isn't demonic. This is just like, oh God, I don't want to think about that. There's a woman that's laying on a morgue table. And there's a woman that's visiting this morgue area or something, and she turns around.
I saw it in the trailer.
And of course, when she turns around, then the woman sits up. For me, that's like, I'm out of here, I'm out of here, I'm out of here. And
it's scary.
But then the woman goes to speak, and she can't because her mouth has been wire jawed shut. Like, that's so real to me that it makes me like, oh gosh, no, 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 you know, and like those kinds of things for me, I know I can't watch and sit with long because it will stick around for years.
It sticks with you, yeah.
So I know I can't do it. That's my limits with those things.
Here's what I want to say, that, you know, where you've discerned your limit, maybe you push it to watch the Haunting of Hill House, because you say, oh, it's really well made, or you say, oh, maybe there's some redeeming value in it for you. And I want to say, okay, well, know your limits, Will, and you know, if you find it's too much for you, then stop watching it, right? Or if you find, oh, I'm becoming numb to this sort of thing, and now I'm watching increasingly violent, like, that's probably a good warning sign there. But then you've set a limit by saying, hey, I feel like we as Christians shouldn't be watching movies where God is depicted as weak, or the devil has more power than God or something. Okay, well, I mean, I want to say, hey, Will, I support you in that determination for you. And for me, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to watch any movies where kids are getting, you know, no children were harmed in the filming of this movie. You know, like, for me, that's my line that I draw. And I guess what I want to say is that we as Christians, we're so used to other people making decisions for us about what we can and can't do, what we should and shouldn't do. Instead of saying, well, what do the scriptures say about this? Or what does my conscience say as I read the scriptures for me? I'm not saying for everybody. I'm saying for me. And so I want to say that on the one hand, we should listen to our conscience, and we should be attentive to what other people are saying. But at the end of the day, I want to say that for us to create this idea that the horror genre has no redeeming value, I want to say, no, there are some redeeming values. In other words, it helps. There can be a help in certain movies with certain limits, and not too over the top. It helps us to connect with our fears. But here's the critical part, and this is where I want us to land. Just connecting with fear is not enough. We have to process it somewhere. And I want to suggest too that, you know, we have our partners over at the Garden. We've got counselors who are clinical soul care providers who can talk with clients about what's bothering you, what's troubling you, what makes you anxious, what makes you afraid. And so this is not a promo for that, but I want to say, finding somebody to talk to about your everyday fears, finding somebody to talk to, if, like, let's say I watch this movie and it provokes this fear for my kids, you know, that are my kids safe? And I just find myself dwelling on threats to my kids. I should be talking to somebody about that. I shouldn't just be ignoring that. In other words, whatever is provoked in my soul by what my eyes see, when it gets provoked, what gets stirred up, it needs to be processed. And so a lot of the ways people do it when they watch the movie, they joke about it afterward and they laugh and say, oh, that was the scariest part. Well, what was your scariest part for you? You know, oh, when the ghost jumped out of the wall or whatever, you know. And that's one way we process it. But another way is to say, well, what is this doing in my soul? It's really stirring this stuff up in me. And maybe I should talk about that. Maybe I should talk about the deeper story, the deeper fears that I wrestle with. And maybe the movie helps me get in touch with it, but maybe what I need to do next is I need to go talk with somebody about it. So I'd like to suggest that there can be redeeming value if it prompts us to do more soul work, to do and afterward to praise God that He is greater, that greater is He who is in you than he who is in the world, and to say, gosh, I'm so glad that Jesus saves and that my soul is secure and I don't got to worry about that stuff happening to me. So I will say that our last episode on Halloween and this episode on the horror movie genre is probably going to provoke some controversy. So we do welcome you posting in the comments. Try to be constructive though. So memes that say, oh, you guys are devil worshipers because you celebrate Halloween, that's probably not helpful and not constructive. But there is certainly room for you to post a comment and to disagree. We'd love to hear from you and would love to continue the conversation. Christians of good conscience can disagree and still love Jesus and still love each other. I love you, my brother Will, and I've loved talking with you over these past 2 episodes. about these two subjects. So we're going to sign off for today, and we hope to see you in our next episode.
See ya.